Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Wednesday the 21st and I'm just trying to stall at the moment just to make sure my network is kicking in and working. We still have about 9 seconds of the 30-second delay buffer to fill in. So we're at the end of the year here at December 21st, 4 days until Christmas, and then 6 more days at that point. So I'm not really accomplishing too much as far as the accountability section. I did play 2 episodes of solo mode, and I really do have a decent argument in which I can go back and do these solo mode 3 victories in the next 9 days again, even though I've already gotten that daily quest done for this month. But it did definitely create a situation now where it opened secret packs, and because it opened secret packs, then I ran out of gems. So yeah, I'm kind of back to where I was before. You're always kind of just bottom back out to being below 1,000, below 2,000 gems, and you really need to be above 2,000, 2 or 3,000 before you even start to think about opening secret packs, because as soon as you open one secret pack, you're just going to cause an avalanche of other secret packs to unlock. Even though we've seen all the secret packs and we have a decent amount of cards from pretty much all the secret packs, they still are probably your best bet as far as getting cards that are thematically connected. Random cards that are thematically connected, I suppose. Whereas opening these legacy card packs draws from a much bigger draw pool, so you're just getting kind of random cards that are all probably unplayable old cards that just wouldn't work in the meta, and you don't get enough of them in these legacy pack openings for you to like get crafting points really from it. Like, ideally, if these legacy packs of their draw pool of nearly 4,000 cards, if they gave you 10 cards per pack instead of 2, then I would be just overflowing with extra cards. But no such luck. And I can't help but feel like there is probably an argument that I should see once again if I could make some level of progress on making a new top tier meta deck. Like, all those legacy cards were either just distributed cards so they can't be dismantled, or they were just not any cards that I have extra copies of. I actually don't have that many extra copies of cards that can't be dismantled, really, when I looked at it. So yeah, these solo stories are, I did Tribe of the Abyssal Waters and Dark Dead Vengeance, and each one of these, regardless of how many actual events are in them, take at least an hour, although Dark Dead Vengeance had several more scenes and storyline things, so it actually took a lot longer. And they're just continuously adding more of these, so I guess next month I'll try and go through 2 more of these, and it is just going to become a consistent thing that every month I'm going to have to do a couple of solo modes. And I don't know, maybe I should just put them out as extra specials on my channel instead of even trying to schedule around them, because it may not just be worth it. A new series started airing on my channel today called The Beginner's Guide. It's kind of a rough game, but I think it is somewhat impactful and worthy of being seen And there's, I think, a lot of room for criticism that I was able to make on the game. Now, unfortunately, a lot of that criticism is just straight up negative criticism that even the phrase may be somewhat redundant. But yeah, it definitely felt like there was a lot of bad being sold as good around the conceit that you're showing. The narrator in the game is showing you these games that honestly look like very low effort vertical slices of a game or asset flips of a game. They just don't feel good in any way, worthy enough to be things that are being highlighted in an overarching walking simulator game, which is what it really is. Because you'll see, like, one chapter will show you one game, and then the next chapter will show you the next game. And honestly, I don't know if I really believe that the narrative that happens in the beginner's story, what is it called? The beginner's tale? Beginner's something. I can't even remember the name. I don't really know if I believe the actual narrative there, and if it is, or if it is just a collection of really bad games being sold as something much more. And inherently, without even really spoiling anything, that's the problem with the beginner's guide. That's the name of it. Is that it really isn't a beginner's guide to making games. It doesn't tell you anything useful or helpful as far as making games. And it pretends like it's showing you something that's really important. And if you're just not on board with the idea that there's some importance behind these bad games, then you're just not going to be behind the idea of the experience at all. Perhaps personally, since I look at every single game that comes out on Steam, I'm already extremely jaded around the idea of low effort, ugly looking games, and I'm already extremely capable of dismissing those games and not even giving them a chance. Whereas perhaps some other gamers would be less jaded on that point. Although I don't know if they really would. When you look at the vast majority of people who buy the vast majority of games, they are going for those AAA, super polished, visually looking experiences. And even then, when you get something like Call of Duty or FIFA or something, there's a lot of room for people to complain about the bugs and the other elements. I didn't have anything in the graveyard, so activating that was pointless. Although, maybe it will get a daily quest done. Speaking of being jaded, as a YouTuber, it makes a lot of sense as to why they talk so much about thumbnails being just super important, and how a lot of content creators would just despair and become jaded. It is super easy looking at the beginner's guide right now, which has been out for 40 minutes, and it had a premiere set up for months. So like, you tried to do everything, well, I tried to do everything other than put a thumbnail on it, and 40 minutes in, it's still sitting at 0 views. So it's like super easy to either say, oh yeah, you really got to get those thumbnails in there, which it's obviously true. You have to, to have any level of success, you have to have clickbait, you have to have thumbnails, you have to have a team that you're extremely unlikely to have, or skills you're extremely unlikely to have, to just get people to look at it. And then what almost certainly happens is, once the clickbait thumbnail brings in a new viewer, the videos are not that good. Like, the quality of particularly gaming content on YouTube, from what I've seen, and I haven't done extreme deep dives, doesn't look particularly good. And you have to throw a very wide net in particular to even define what gaming content on YouTube is, because you're also including major successes like PewDiePie, who isn't really that focused on being like a video game critic or even showing off his gameplay, but will occasionally make a video and succeed there. Or you have extreme specialists that have extreme personalities, which is like Dr. Disrespect, and those specialists probably don't even succeed very well on YouTube. And then you have critics like Zero Punctuation, who's an extreme personality, or comedians like Video Game Donkey, who's his own personality. It's always personality first that succeeds on YouTube, and they're just farming video games for content. Good Mythical Morning would almost certainly have a gaming channel if the main people on that if the main people in charge were just more into gaming. They may very well have something like that, and I'm just not even aware of it. But then they would also have to fight with a bunch of content IDs a lot more. Like, it is extremely redundant to say the YouTube algorithm is redundant, is broken, but I do think it is broken. I am not attempting here to justify my bad content, which, well, I'll agree, yeah. It doesn't come off as the best content ever, a lot of times, visually, or just in even my criticism. But the fact that you can't get the algorithm to, in the first hour, throw it in front of some random person's eyes, and until at least one person watches it for more than a couple of minutes, I guess that would be kind of unfair if you made just an absolute garbage video and it was just constantly being thrown because of the algorithm in front of more and more people's eyes until somebody watched it for at least 10% of the length or interacted with it in some way. Like, ideally, that's how pathetic I think I am as a content creator. And I'm coming off way more depressed in this conversation than I really am, because I don't care, really. I know people say that, but as a YouTube channel, you wouldn't be making 10 years plus of content, or nearly 10 years, if you were just trying to succeed. I would have given up after a year or two and just gone, oh, it's impossible, because it really is impossible. Even 10 years ago, it was impossible. That being said, YouTube Shorts changes a lot of that. But yeah. I would be, as a content creator, much happier if the algorithm, if it did force people to look at videos with 0 views that are new until somebody at least does a thumbs down or a thumbs up or a comment or something. Something more than they didn't react to it at all or give it a chance, and thus they've accidentally started watching a video they never were going to have any interest on in the first place, and they left in the first 30 seconds. And if dislikes actually had that power on YouTube, that would be kind of interesting to re-empower the dislike button some way, and say, hey, if if you want this video to stop being shown to people, somebody's got to actually sit through it. Somebody's actually got to watch it for 10% of its length. Somebody's got to actually thumbs down it. Although you still would have a lot of bots, I guess, then just automatically thumbs downing it. So it really needs to be not as much a thumbs up, thumbs down, or comment as it needs to be somebody needs to sit through it and watch it. But also, the truth is that there's just rules for the successful YouTubers that are so ahead of the curve, and where the algorithm is going to extremely benefit the successful, the rich, the wealthy, the people that rub elbows with Susan Wojcicki. And then there's rules for everybody else who, there is just this always fear that at some point YouTube will say, we're just going to kick off everybody that has less than 10,000 subscribers or even 100,000 subscribers. And there is potentially a crackdown that should happen on YouTube as far as people just putting personal videos that are public. Just a initiative to say, hey, you've got a video of this wedding, there's a bunch of random people here, this should not be publicly listed. Things like that. Or you've got a 10-year-old video of your graduation from college, and that's really has no reason to be public. And that's what they're secretly trying to do with the algorithm anyways, and succeeding very well at, is just creating a tier where 99% of the public videos on YouTube are below the water and just never going to be seen by anybody. But the problem is, doing that, you're just casting this very wide, indiscriminate net between content that is being designed to actually be shown to people and for public release, and content that is not really to the level that it should be for public release. But I imagine that is enough whining, because that's all really that was. And at the end of the day, the YouTube Shorts is changing things fairly drastically. I am now showing off the rapid development that I did on the Steam game YouTube Shorts. So over the next week or two, you'll be able to see the new vertical 1920 by 1080 or 1080 by 1920 version. It in the thumbnail makes it look like the movie that is being played, and the screenshots are actually smaller, but technically you're at a much higher resolution because it was like 500 by 500 before. So it's actually an improvement, and it definitely feels like it's the way to go. But I am trying to get any kind of feedback I can get. And these YouTube Shorts are getting, like in the first hour, 100, 200 views. Which, for as bloviating as I am and long-winded, it is very weird to say, hey, your success is in not speaking at all and just making YouTube Shorts that are just automated things. Just because that's the thing that is being promoted. Inherently, that is far too much like working jobs in the real world, too, where you can be an extremely skilled singer, extremely skilled painter, artist of any kind, extremely intelligent programmer or IT person, and then you get into the working environment and you start looking for jobs, And what are the jobs that people want people to do? It's flip burgers, because they haven't figured out robots to replace burger flippers yet. Stock shelves at grocery stores like Walmart, because they don't have robots to replace that yet. Or work at Amazon.com as delivery drivers, because they haven't automated driving yet. Or package shippers. It's all these very low intelligence, repetitive, low creativity. Maybe low intelligence is the wrong phrase. Low creativity is the right phrase. Those are the jobs that are by far still in existence. There are no rich princes, or very few rich princes, that will give out grants to artists, and no governments that will really give out grants to artists so that they can paint pictures, make songs. If you want to work in the music industry, you basically have to sell your soul and not ever have a chance of succeeding anywhere as much as you will look like you're succeeding. It is just the supply of highly creative workers is very high, where the demand of highly creative people for highly creative people, or even slightly creative people, is approaching zero. Which, not to get into an economics rant, again, it is definitely an argument for just universal basic income. I would say at least half of all jobs could just disappear around universal basic income. Anyways, so yeah, I could see more people sticking to their creative tendencies and just living off UBI in the future. That is the utopian dream, I suppose. Whereas the nightmare version of the future is that more and more people are going to starve to death, or struggle to get paid less and less, or work harder and harder until they die of exhaustion. Which that is certainly a thing that they never talk about either, is how a lot of jobs are literally killing their employees, sometimes with extreme examples of like asbestos in the offices and the walls, or the products they're working with, but sometimes just with the standard amount of extremely high amounts of pressure and stress that are put on people. Stress is the number one killer. Yeah. But yeah, suffice it to say, I'm talking about this because the accountability section was somewhat short today. Beyond making 2 about 1 hour Yu-Gi-Oh episodes, I watched Rick and Morty, which I guess I got another episode there, thank goodness. A couple episodes of the new Bleach series. I've started watching Naruto. I really am just falling into watching old animes that are either continuing from a decade ago plus, or things I never saw. I never actually watched Naruto, and honestly, I probably am going to have to skip several of the first season's episodes, because it's just such a long series, and it does kind of pivot away. I'm also watching One Punch Man. One Punch Man is kind of interesting in that you have both seasons on Hulu, both in dubbed and subbed, and then the way they depict that is they'll put the dub first, and then if you finish watching dub of episode 1, it'll jump past the subbed version of episode 1 and go to the dub version of episode 2, which having to select at the beginning does seem fairly weird. Obviously, Hulu's not designed as well as far as their interface as Netflix is, because Netflix, you would obviously just select the episode. They wouldn't say dub or sub on it at all, and then you would select the audio and select whether you want to turn on the subtitles, and you have the options all in the same place as far as whether you want to turn on the subtitles in something that may be Japanese only, like One Punch Man. Yeah, it's an interesting thing in that there's just two different places you can watch the first season. So yeah, I'm watching One Punch Man, Bleach, and Naruto at this point. I might as well start watching Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball 2 just to get the full triumvirate there. I've already seen One Punch Man, and I'll finish that fairly quickly since there aren't that many episodes. But yeah, it's really just an example of me kind of taking it slow. And I really should be playing No More Heroes and or some other game, making some footage. I probably should also be scheduling videos. Yeah. I watched a TubeBuddy live stream also. I'm still watching a ton of YouTube stuff. Where they looked at people's YouTube shorts and criticized it. They didn't really have a lot to say as far as the very weird, unique thing I'm doing. I tried to listen with open ears and as much as possible on their suggestions. But I don't think I really learned too much of anything. They did put a push for making even shorter shorts than a minute long, which I guess if you can do that, that might make sense. If you can make a 10-second short and it's just really impactful, then yeah, I guess then you might get somebody who loops around it for 10 or 20. I haven't really seen super short shorts though. But even TubeBuddy really isn't this kind of like overall authority figure. Like they're doing clickbaits in their videos. Like that stream was like how to get your first 10,000 views on shorts using YouTube Shorts, and they never really said anything like that. Like they didn't say anything. They said that probably would only want 2 hashtags in the title at most, never a third. I don't know if I have any hashtags in the title, but then in the description there are 3 hashtags. So maybe I should adjust that. But maybe I shouldn't change anything since it's somewhat succeeding. I wish I did get more feedback on the YouTube Shorts I got. The fact that there are hundreds of people watching these, or hundreds of views on these, and not a single person has said anything, is a little disconcerting from the perspective of the old way of doing YouTube. But it also makes all the sense in the world that you would be watching very much like TikTok, and just swiping and continuing to the next thing over and over again. And then I think the US government passed a law saying you can't have TikTok on government devices, which is not as far or as extreme as saying you can't have TikTok on any phone sold in the United States, which Congress and the U.S. government certainly could pass that law if they wanted to. While the Constitution protects freedom of speech to a certain extent, it doesn't 100% surpass like freedom of national security and sovereignty. So if they make the argument that it's a matter of national security, they can ban apps from being sold. Or if they can make an argument that it's a safety issue, they could ban apps. If they want to. I don't know if there's as good of an argument that they should be doing any of that. I would prefer them to try to address bigger issues. And frankly, if they're going to ban TikTok in some slow build up to World War III with China, they might as well just straight up send the missiles, shoot the nukes, and just start it out completely. Let's see. I am rambling. We probably should just go through video game news. Today, guess I'm gonna stick with Zodiac Tri-Brigade as long as it feels like it's working. I think I am just back. It's very possible Zodiac Tri-Brigade does not win quite as much as Flowanders does, but Flowanders is just not as fun for me to play. It is slower and to play Flowanders and more limited in the daily quests that I can actually defeat and accomplish. This one is, I think, stopping me from special summoning. It is very possible that even past the new year by a couple days I won't accomplish much. I would like to do a Lego set. I've got quite a few of them at this point. So it'd be nice to take a little bit of a break. It is winter, obviously, so there is this high probability of coldness, and with this high probability of coldness, there is a possibility of losing power and just being in a fairly dangerous situation that I have to be somewhat prepared for, and I am definitely more prepared this year than last year for it. And then there is something about my internet that either it's because of Christmas or it's because of coldness that my internet upload and latency and just all of that seems to be particularly situated in such a way that it is getting worse and worse, and I'm having to tweak numbers to try to get it to the place where it should be, and then a couple days later I'm having to tweak the numbers even lower, and yeah, it's just not a consistent internet experience, which is crazy because it's fiber internet, so it should be fairly consistent on bandwidth, or at the very least it should have some quality of service into it where if the network is congested, it's doing just a much better job of limiting the bandwidth to make everything a smooth experience as far as latency. I personally do not care if it drops from a theoretical 350 megabits per second, which is all I've ever seen it go up to, even though the connection is up to a gigabit, or the service is up to a gigabit. Like, I don't care if it goes from 350 to 100, as long as it's consistently the 100. So if they're seeing congestion, it should probably just simulate that congestion is still going on for a minute later. A minute, maybe even a lot longer than a minute, really. Just to keep everything somewhat stable. And yes, that would be some level of throttling, but they're always doing throttling. They're just doing it really poorly. And arguably, they wouldn't call it throttling if it's due to just overall network usage. Yeah, no internet service provider wants to admit that during the holidays when everybody's at home, the network is just being overused. But that's pretty much the case. I guess that does make an argument that Cyber Monday and just internet usage in schools and offices is still extremely high compared to home usage. Yeah, and it's definitely not a good signal for what 10 years from now the internet will look like if it is just increasingly getting congested, because we're going to hit a maximum theoretical amount of information we can send, even if we were using quantum technology or all fiber light speed technology. Like, there's only so much so far that can get us. As far as actual video game news, though, this is a video game channel sometimes. It's supposed to be all the time. We already talked about this, but it does seem like I am, until I get around to figuring out why I get repeats, I am just going to become a little bit more redundant on these news stories. And it is a big story in this case to say Epic has been ordered to pay $520 million to, or has agreed to pay $520 million to settle FTC allegations. Let's see. A new Witcher 3 PC update should improve overall stability and performance. I don't think that update is out yet. Over 20 minutes of Assassin's Creed Jade have leaked. The upcoming mobile game takes place in China. Interesting. None of these videos are actually available to see. It's interesting that I feel like there have been two set in China. Oh, this was a bad time to activate this. Like mobile or smaller games in the Assassin's Creed series, but they do seem like they are stubbornly trying to not have a main major AAA game be set in China or Japan, even though they, I think, are going to finally pull the trigger on that eventually. Wow, I am really running out of cards a lot more often these days. Like, there's either some level of stall tactics that has become a new meta deck, which that would be a nightmare meta deck for me to play if my main goal is just to wait out somebody to run out of cards. But I probably also just am overusing card draws to get card advantage, which apparently card advantage has been balanced in some way where it's not as useful. Let's see. Nintendo, this is new news, has launched a multi-day indie game showcase. 2 new games hit the Nintendo eShop today, and 2 more also announced for release in 2023. Do we have an actual listing here of what these games are as far as this indie holiday event? Well, there's this video here. I guess I'll just click that and start playing it and see. Meanwhile, Lolly Dragon, or Lolly, I guess that's how you pronounce that. Yeah, I should know. I see enough lollies around to know the right pronunciation. He wants to see my deck list. Is there a way to do that? Not at the moment, but I'll bring it up after this game. Yeah. You would think there should be some way to go into the menu and bring up your deck list while you're playing. But I guess you just have to remember. And I can tell you this is a pretty standard Zodiac Tri-Brigade, which was a top tier meta deck. Alright. That was weird. Firefox just crashed. You know what? I've had more trouble with Firefox than Chrome. Chrome was super stable as a thing. Now maybe I've got too many plugins installed and extensions installed, so maybe I could back down on some extensions, certainly. I won't do that while I'm streaming, but yeah. So hopefully I'll still be able to see the chat. It should work, and hopefully I'll be able to actually watch this Nintendo video. So day 1 of this kind of advent calendar shows off a game called Floppy Nights, and let's see, doesn't look particularly much of anything, just kind of like a card-based strategy placement game. Then we have another game called Trapped. What's kind of funny about these indie games is that they don't seem to be the kinds of games that ever get teased or announced first anywhere else. So Nintendo wants that exclusive first announcement. This dog game might have been announced if this is Paparazzi, but yeah. At a certain level, I imagine these indie games are partially funded by Nintendo, so that it seems like that might be a fair trade as far as for being first announced on a Nintendo Direct, and it's almost certainly going to get you more eyes in front of your footage if you wait to it. Yeah, Mortal Shell Complete Edition is just a repackaging of a game that already exists. So there's like 4 games that they announced. So a Switch version of Paparazzi, a Switch version of Mortal Shell, and Floppy Nights for day 1, which, in all fairness, if they had only done one announcement of one game per day for an advent calendar, that wouldn't have felt extremely weird. That being said, you're also starting in not really an advent calendar, because an advent calendar would have started on December 1st. You're really just making announcements for 2 or 3 days at most. I still feel like it's very weird that the Steam sale either starts tomorrow or the next day. Like, they basically are just having a Steam Christmas sale instead of a Steam winter sale. And it's a little weird that they're putting the Christmas back into the sales. But I imagine also they just don't want games to be on sale before Christmas, and they would prefer to get as much sales as possible at full price for people who are buying games for kids on their Steam account. I kind of think there's a problem with the Steam accounts too, that, and this is, I guess, an inherent problem with just computer security at this point, is that everybody signs up and makes accounts using an email, and all the passwords are recoverable by an email. There really should be a different system in which you can make an account and say, hey, I don't have an email. If I need to recover my account, I'm either going to do it with a printed out code, or I'm going to have to get a text message with two-factor authentication. The fact that you have these two-factor, like, Steam app authentications for Steam Guard, and they are connected still to a smartphone that still is connected to an email. It's just like we're tying everything to this old technology for not really the best reason. We don't, probably in the United States in particular, want a government issued ID because of ridiculous reasons, but that is the general feeling, I think, amongst most people, is that we wouldn't want just a government issued ID that to start a Facebook account or a Steam account or something like that. And there's just not really a service otherwise that replaces that. Let's see. But particularly when you're thinking about setting up a kid's account on Steam and trying to get them into PC gaming, like, the very first thing you have to do these days, if you were to buy a kid a gaming PC or laptop, is you're going to get heavily pushed into making a Microsoft account, which maybe they have that already, maybe they don't, but you're going to be heavily pushed into that to do Windows 10 or Windows 11. You're going to get heavily pushed into Windows 11, which I wouldn't recommend doing Windows 11, really. You're going to get heavily pushed and forced into making an email for Steam. You're probably going to need an email. You're probably going to go into an email for NVIDIA drivers if you have an NVIDIA graphics card. If you're on Epic Game Store or anything else, you're going to run into that issue too. So everything does seem to have this weird single point of failure. Lolly Dragon asks, why would I go into Trident? Do I have a good reason for why I played that way? A habit, more than probably anything else. I was thinking that just because I don't pay a lot of attention to this, I would just destroy one of these guys just to get rid of them, just in case, without having to read what these guys are. Just trying to see if I could destroy it without any reaction there. And so I just took a stupid risk to destroy the guy, and then my next plan certainly was to then go into Monkey and do a direct attack, and then go into Zeus, which it shamefully took me forever to even figure out you could go into Zeus, and that was the strategy of the Zodiac Tribrigade in the first place. I was playing for months, not even knowing that Zeus existed. But yeah, the most answer is it's just dumb habit. I don't want to, as I'm talking about video game news, I don't have the energy and the time to sit here and read what this card does. And since I don't have the energy and time to sit and read what the card does, I just was risking it and taking a dumb chance. Which, yeah. If I was 100% concerned or interested in the strategy of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, I would 100% focus on it and then read what every single card does until I have a general knowledge of what all 10,000 plus of the cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Do, so I could recognize them by their visual appearance, and then play the absolute perfect strategy according to that information. Moving on with video game news. Lolly Dragon did say on the next thing, I'd rather go into Monkey to attack directly than go into Zeus. That was the next step. But honestly, his strategy probably is better just to directly go into it. There is reasons why you want to have his extra characters in the graveyard, so you would turn into Trident first. You just wouldn't activate his ability, then you would turn into the Monkey and attack. High on Life is currently the most popular game on Xbox Game Pass. Squanch Games' first-person shooter top ranks despite its mixed critical reception, which I think this is just another great example of how critical reception, mainstream video game critics in particular, are just obviously not in line with the people that are playing video games. I don't know if I'm in line with the feelings of people playing video games either, but it's obvious that critical reception means very little as far as just who's having fun and who's playing what. And a lot of that certainly comes down to just who is playing what games with their friends. Since the creator of this game also worked on Rick and Morty, it is worth mentioning that yes, Rick and Morty is also often extremely critically panned in some instances, while it is still extremely well received amongst its fandom and people watching it and popular around that. I think the meme of you have to have 1,000 IQ or something like that, which you can't even have 1,000 IQ to truly understand Rick and Morty, is actually the exact opposite of how I think you're best off enjoying Rick and Morty. I think you're best off enjoying it as half turning your brain off and just having fun. Let's see. Speaking of being somewhat disconnected from reality, like mainstream video game journalists, or just a common opinion, the Last of Us TV show's co-creator claims that it is the greatest story ever told in video games. Well, the phrase "the greatest story ever told" is almost exclusively always used to refer to the Bible, if not the New Testament, and the birth and life and death of Jesus. So you are certainly creating a parallelism there that you probably shouldn't. And almost certainly there is at least some game out there that has retold the story of the Bible or Jesus in some way in video games. Probably not done very well. we are in a weird position as far as the narrative quality in video games. If I was to ignore The Last of Us, which, yeah, I don't think The Last of Us is the best story ever told in video games, I would have to think about what game I do think is the best story ever told. It creates an odd conundrum, certainly, because when you think about it, there are visual novels, there's lots of them, and visual novels are effectively novels, and they tend to be at such a longer length and much deeper focus around around the narrative that you would almost certainly have to say that Fate/Stay... No, that's not the one. What's the other visual novel I'm thinking of? Not the Fate series. The story there is not that good. Not the Corpse Party series story, and that's probably not the best story either. Let's see if I can pick this up. Like, I don't have anything more to say about this. It really is just somebody bloviating and bigging themselves up. Let's see. Best visual novel ever. We'll just Google search that. Here we go. We'll just straight up do actual research. And inherently, that is where I would go with the story. Like, you can't say Super Mario Bros. 1 or something like that is a great story. That they're all... Those kinds of games are so focused on gameplay that you're just not going to have that amazing of story. I would be tempted to say that Bayonetta's story is actually very good, but Bayonetta's story is also very goofy. But when you get to comparing one genre, which would be books and narratives, and video games that tend to want to have more interaction around them, the interaction has to be added almost always at the expense of the narrative. So, books are better, probably in every case. If you compared the best book ever to the best story in a video game, the best book ever almost certainly would succeed. That's much better. But here we have a Game Rant article as far as 12 best visual novels of the decade ranked. And I was thinking of this game. Like Arcadia Falls, The Letter, Lovers of Ether. Some of these I don't think I'd particularly agree with. Long Live the Queen, Katawa Shoujo. No, the House of Fate Morgana. That's cheating, certainly, to make a visual novel around an existing play or a book. I'm not sure which one House of Fate Morgana it would be. I have to actually play here too. Otherwise I'm gonna end up... See, and this is where, again, without looking, I'd like to be able to destroy one of these continuous traps and use this character, this ability, but that then runs into the risk of him countering some way. But yeah, the general idea is I want to be able to clear the field without having to use up my two options to clear the field with Zeus. after the fact, which is anticipating that I'm going to have to clear the field 3 times. Also, I don't want to have to clear the field while these are still placed as traps, which arguably maybe I shouldn't have placed them as traps. I don't know if I said I was going to show my deck and then I forgot about it, so I'll try and remember after this game. Yep. Like, Doki Doki Literature Club being number 4th in the space, I don't think is the best one. So not Steins Gate 0. I would say probably Steins Gate, the original. 0 is like a prequel. Is probably the best story in video games, if I was to pick overall. Danganronpa has a lot of story, but I don't know if I'd really go with that. This is a pretty bad list, honestly. Let's go and just type in Google best story in video games and just see what we even really would get with that. Overall, if we don't limit ourselves specifically to visual novels. Of course, I still feel like, there we go, you probably are going to have to limit yourself to original content. So, the Witcher series is not original content. It's based off of a book series. So, I wouldn't want to say that. But clearly, Witcher 3's story was one of the best stories in video games. So, there is an argument there. They have a 45 list here. StarCraft 2, if you're nostalgic for that, I think the story is pretty great there. Gone Home's story is pretty good, although it is kind of uniquely designed. Her story is pretty good. The Wolf Among Us is not 100% original content, so maybe you would not want to call that the best story because of that. Let's see. Kentucky Route Zero, I didn't play. What Remains of Edith Finch, I don't think I've played that yet. Portal 2, pretty great stories there, and that's original. Firewatch, a decent story despite its weird people in charge. Spiritfarer, I haven't played. Half-Life 2, again, if you have nostalgic around the Half-Life series, Half-Life 2 is probably something you would consider a great story. Uncharted 4, Final Fantasy X, yeah. Just for sheer numbers, the Final Fantasy series almost certainly is going to have amazingly good parts of their narrative just to keep people interested. I think throwing out Life is Strange 2 as an option is a weird one because not that many people really would play, and so you definitely would have to make an argument of relevancy. If there is an amazing book out there but nobody read it, does it deserve to be on the list? Final Fantasy IX, God of War Ragnarok, yeah. I would suspect that God of War Ragnarok story might be a lot more impactful. What is this guy even trying to do here? Just end it quickly. I think that didn't help him at all. That he could have potentially survived a turn. And inherently this highlights the problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! In general is that, here, we'll just activate spell cards just out of habit. That you don't get rewarded if you're not um, playing a game all the way through. So if you're about to lose, it is just more time efficient to do something that will kill you a lot faster. Sniper Ranger is back. He says, "Yellow, long time no see, Rydo. I am sorry." That's fine. People come in and they come out. It's half the algorithm's fault, and it's half the fact that YouTube content creators are just living a very different life than normal people, in that we don't have most YouTube content creators probably aren't also focusing on full-time jobs or like going to school full-time, although certainly a lot of them are just tossing things to cast spells. I don't even know if I haven't already done the lifetime experience of casting spells, so there may not be any reason that I'm even activating those cards. It's always nice when people do come back. And yeah, if I knew anything more than that, and as to why people leave and come back, as far as if there was something I could do to better accommodate people staying on YouTube or seeing my videos on YouTube, I would try to do that. But Sniper Ranger followed up, "I was busy with college and work, but I am free from college, so I should be here a lot more." Well, I guess congratulations on, I assume, leaving college. I will either by graduating or just being done with it some other way. Congratulations on that new freedom. Yep. I personally don't even think colleges will be that big of a deal in 20-30 years, and that most people will not really even want to do them, and there will be hopefully no need to go to colleges. But I definitely have that drilled in me that I would want to see my nieces and nephews go to college, but that is just basically a educational dogma more than a rational thought. Yep. So do we have activate spells as a lifetime thing? I just want to check this. Activate trap cards, yes. Special summon, activate the effects of a card from the graveyard, yes. So no, I've already activated all the spells I need to as far as lifetime. Sniper Ranger clarifies, "I'm done with finals," is what I mean. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So Lolly Dragon wanted to see my deck. Where is it? Here it is. My deck list. It's really not still a great system to show off these cards. You can try and... I don't even know how you share them. Like, where'd the little button go? I guess it's further back. So, yeah. 3 of these guys. 3 of these guys. 3 of these guys. 3 of these guys. 2 of these guys. 3 of these guys. 1 of these guys. 2 of these guys. 1 of these guys. 1 of these. 3 of these, which arguably I should think about getting rid of this. Let's see if I could maybe add 1 here. Nope, don't have it. I could craft it if necessary. Let's see. Maybe I could add 1 more of these and then get rid of 1 of these and make a slight adjustment there. Or maybe I could add one of these. Yeah, I don't want to craft anything new though. Well, we could add one of these and get rid of that. I don't want to particularly change the percentage of monsters versus spells. But yeah. So 3 of these, 1 of these, 2 of these, 3 of these, 2 of these, 2 of these, 3 of these, and 3 of these. And then 1 of each of these, which honestly, if I could add more, probably wouldn't be a terrible thought. Be fairly redundant, but there are definitely cards like this that I just never play. If there is any strategy around that, I don't even know. Sometimes I play this. It is better, as I understand it, to play this and some special summon that, and then maybe even special summon this, then special summon and link summon this. But yeah, some of these I don't think I ever use. Access code talker, very possibly. Mostly I will just jump to this guy and just use this. If I could have 1 extra copy of this in the extra deck, I would go with that. Yeah. Let's see. See if we could get rid of some things here, since I'm not playing those with those anyways. There we go. Make some changes. Changes that I'm sure won't really affect much of anything. And then we'll jump back in here. So yeah, since the Last of Us TV co-creator said Last of Us was the best video game ever told, we were going through a list here, a random list of, I don't even know what website this is, of games that have been rated high as far as having good story. And apparently there's supposed to be a second part of this, because it stops at 26 of 45, and the list here is not even a lot of them. You definitely get into some weirdness when you're talking story in video games too, because video games as a genre are kind of uniquely always in that sci-fi or fantasy realm. And as such, you tend to always have more creative tales than you would expect, whereas a lot of TV shows in particular, or even movies, have to stay within some realm of reality. You can't go super crazy. You can't have weird twists like you would with half of the Japanese games where it was going. Yeah, it seems like I had to turn off my ad blocker so they could try and show me an ad before we could see the other part of this page. Either that or it just didn't load. So, A Plague Tale: Innocence. Yeah, that probably is a pretty good story. I haven't played it yet. The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead making it to 24th spot is an interesting example, because there were some very good writers writing the first season of The Walking Dead, but it was like 5 writers doing 5 different episodes, so you also have this fairly inconsistent character writing. There were episodes of The Walking Dead season 1 where this girl character was written like a terrified little 6-year-old, and then there were episodes where she was written like a fully or much more confident 14-year-old, and it just became fairly inconsistent because different writers were writing at the same time and not collaborating. It wasn't like 5 writers were sitting in the writing room working together. It was 5 writers had been given an assignment to patchwork together their writing into one character. That being said, Telltale Games Walking Dead was extremely good. Chrono Trigger, I think Chrono Trigger probably is one of the best stories in the game, even as someone who hasn't played it. People wouldn't still be nostalgic for it and still playing, still talking about Chrono Trigger if it wasn't the case. Whereas, like the sequel to Chrono Trigger, which I think is Chrono Cross, I don't think originally even was released in the United States and the West, and is in no way talked about. We are going to almost certainly see Mother 3 as the game with the best story. Guardians of the Galaxy, this is probably not an original story as much as it's leaning heavily on the Guardians of the Galaxy characters in the movies and the comic books, which I'm being particularly unfair by not giving games their just due, even if their characters are based on something different. Right. So with these new cards, I think the general thing will still be that I can only summon 4 of them at a time. Go ahead and activate this. But it does seem like it's probably worthwhile to have those extra cards in the extra deck. We'll again try and destroy this trap card. And we're waiting for him to react. So we'll go through this list again. Ghost of Tsushima, I've heard the story's really good. A lot of these games are just straight up new enough that I haven't gotten around to playing them. I'm just so far behind. Witcher 3 Wild Hunt getting 20th spot. Undertale getting 19th spot. Undertale story. Metal Gear Solid 3. Yakuza 0. Danganronpa getting the 16th spot. Which is interesting that people think that that story is that amazingly good. It definitely is an example, though, of a visual novel based game that has slightly more gameplay mechanics to it, but not that much. So obviously they did have to kind of focus on the story. It is also a great example of being a more weird anime type story, and something that you just could not tell this narrative in a TV show or in a video game. You'd have to change so much, you'd have to censor so much to just make it feel palatable. It also is almost certainly an example of how people's nostalgia for games makes them consider the narrative to be a lot better than I think it ever actually is. I think, usually speaking, it's cruel to say, I think most stories are fairly boilerplate and fairly bad. But I am also not a reader, so it would make a lot of sense if people who are big into reading books have a much different experience. Splinter Cell Conviction getting thrown in here. I don't even know if I've heard of that one. Nier Automata story. Yeah. That's probably pretty great. The Shock series, I guess. They're including Bioshock, Bioshock 2, and Bioshock Infinite, I assume. But they probably aren't including System Shock. Or maybe they just straight up have a typo and they're only talking about Bioshock 1. Again, it's fairly cruel, but I kind of have to dismiss a lot of the applause for the Bioshock first game, as that narrative is heavily based on Ayn Randian ideals, although in this case I would say Bioshock's narrative and story is, from the starting point, what if Ayn Rand actually succeeded in some of her ideas doing an Atlas Shrugged type experiment, more than Bioshock being a direct retelling of some book that Ayn Rand actually wrote. And if anything, I would say Bioshock 1 in a lot of ways is a direct criticism of things like Atlas Shrugged, depending on how you interpret the events of Bioshock 1. And yeah, they put out a new trailer for the next Ken Levine game that also is still going to try and look weird and try to gain some sales by feeling like a new kind of Bioshock game, or at least playing that same way. So here's The Last of Us on this random list I googled as far as narratives. So if the co-creator of the TV series says it is the best story ever in video games, apparently there is 11 other games according to this list that has a better story. I would question, having not played The Last of Us, isn't this really just the story of The Binding of Isaac? Not the video game per se, but the Bible story of The Binding of Isaac. You have a father-like figure taking their son, this time it's a girl, off to be sacrificed to appease a god, or in this story it's an organization that wants to experiment on her to possibly fight the virus plague. But if you replace the word virus plague in The Last of Us with, or whatever it was called, if you replace that with, say, the wrath of God, flooding the earth or just killing people, and it is extremely similar of a tale. There almost certainly are more nuances compared to The Binding of Isaac in the Bible, which is only a few chapters or sentences. I don't even think it's a few chapters. But at the core of it, I don't think it's really telling much more of a story than that. It's hardly the Odyssey, in which there's many chapters being told. But there's also number 12 in this list, which highlights the fact that, yeah, story always has to be somewhat adjusted for gameplay mechanics. And if you were to compare the Binding of Isaac's story in the Bible, compare the gameplay mechanics and the interactivity of that to the gameplay mechanics and the interactivity of The Last of Us, obviously The Last of Us wins, because reading the Bible is just reading the Bible, nothing more. Could I have won this turn? I don't think so. So let's see what this list says is better than The Last of Us, to shoot down the TV co-creator of The Last of Us TV show, which it's also worth pointing out, and I am really just rambling here, but The Last of Us TV show is, from what I've heard, a prequel before the events of the game. So even if they're saying the story of the video game is great, the TV show is just going to be lesser than that as a prequel to it. At least that's what I would assume. I don't know of very many prequels that are better than the actual first story. But yeah, this list says Horizon Zero Dawn is better than Last of Us. Very believable. Assassin's Creed 2. Yeah, having actually played Assassin's Creed 2, I think the story on that is pretty great. Detroit Become Human. Yeah, I almost certainly thought at least one Quantic Dream game should be in this list. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some other ones. Knights of the Old Republic. As far as Star Wars, yeah, you get into those deep Star Wars. Again, you can make the criticism that Star Wars is leaning heavily on existing narrative from other formats. God of War 1 gets the 7th spot. I was a teenage exocolonist. I think that is a very oddball, but I haven't played the game. It would be crazy, really, for a game that is almost brand new, August 25th, 2022, to be so highly rated, even above God of War. I expect kind of to see Hades in this list, but maybe Hades' story wasn't really that good. Persona 5 Royale, they're giving the 5th spot to. That Dragon Cancer, well, arguably, I have heard the story is great, but then this creator also said they were tired of YouTubers making coverage on their game and profiting off their game, which was kind of ridiculous since they sold this game and then give it away for free. The idea of a baby having cancer certainly is an emotional story. I don't know if it's a great story, though, if you can disconnect from that, the emotion of it. Like, because in particular as a game, this was almost certainly not a good game. You can tell just by the looks of it. Mass Effect Legendary Edition. A lot of choose your own adventure style choices in Mass Effect, so almost certainly somebody's personalized experience would feel great. And this is one of the few games in this list that highlights the benefits of interactivity in narrative in video games that you cannot have in any other format. You can't have certain people watching The Last of Us TV show and making decisions and getting a different ending, and that feel like the canonical ending to some viewers and not others. Whereas Mass Effect players effectively have their own custom Shepard and their own custom endings amongst a selection of endings. Red Dead Redemption 2, according to this list, is much better than Mass Effect as far as the story. And then Dragon Age Origins getting it. Now, I will inherently say these lists do feel very weird. I don't know why I got a connection failure there, but whatever. But it does definitely highlight that a lot of these lists are 90% accurate, in my opinion. Like, or 90% in line with my opinion might be a better way to go about saying it. Which maybe that just means I'm a weirdo and my opinion on some of these listicles is off, but it can also just be a general case that these listicles don't really mean anything and they are just being written either by AI or by people trying to clickbait people more than have a well thought out cogent argument towards why their decisions are the way they are. Yep. We have 4 more levels on the Battle Pass and 36 more days on the Battle Pass. And let's see, as far as daily things, Fusion Summon, Pendulum Summon, or Link Summon is what I would need to get done. So I think I'll leave it at that, and let's just burn through the news since we've gone an hour and 30 minutes. So here was the Video Games Chronicle article that started off that long rant. This is, I think, the second or third time we've had somebody involved with the Last of Us TV show go on Twitter or wherever they're tweeting nowadays and really big up their new presentation and just try and promote it and say something that almost certainly is an opinion and stating it as fact. The greatest story ever told in video games. It's an open and shut case. I would almost certainly assume that the TV show's co-creator doesn't really play a lot of video games, if they play any. Moving on to the next story. Let's see. Sifu is coming to Xbox and Steam alongside a new Arenas mode, according to Video Games Chronicles. I didn't know it wasn't on the Xbox. It's coming in March of 2023. The Epic Games Store next free game has leaked. Wolfenstein The New Order is free until December 24th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Interesting. I don't feel like that's the game I saw. I'll have to double check as far as free games that are out. December's PlayStation Plus game catalog and classic titles are now available. Let's see, that includes Far Cry and Yakuza games, Ridge Racer, and Heavenly Sword. I think we've covered this list a few times. Mortal Shell coming to PlayStation Plus Extra, just as Mortal Shell Complete Edition is coming to the Switch. Which that seems weird that there's just this quick shift of games coming to PlayStation Plus just about the same time as that they're coming to a secondary console. You would think that PlayStation would want a little bit more exclusivity on things coming to PlayStation Plus Extra, or release games earlier on PlayStation Plus Extra, which they don't seem to be particularly interested in. That's just a blank page, I think. There. So, Amazon's God of War TV series will be incredibly true to the source material. We think it's going to be huge, says the Amazon Studios head of television. That's the right thing to say, too, I imagine. I guess the question I have most burning in my mind is, are we going to see the God of War's nipples throughout the entire TV series with this weird shoulder armor that is just like constantly in half of the screenshots? A more serious question, I would say, is, are they being true to the God of War reboot source material? I assume they are, instead of being incredibly true to like the original God of War series, which would be a little bit different, certainly. But yeah, it would be kind of interesting if the God of War TV series was based on the original game series, and that would be the way you could retell the origins of Kratos without rehashing it or remaking the Kratos game, the original God of War games. That being said, I don't know too much about the God of War games, particularly in the reboots, so as long as you have a Kratos-like character fighting like gods, that's, to me, going to feel like it's being fairly true to the source material. Like, they can't change too much. Obviously, these statements are coming from questions that are coming from Henry Cavill and The Witcher 3 on Netflix, where Henry Cavill is leaving Witcher 3 or has not renewed his contract for Witcher 3, and they're going to recast him. And there's a lot of criticism, obviously, around The Witcher 3 on Netflix, where the creators of the game, or the creators of the Witcher 3 Netflix TV series, are not really staying true to either the books or the games, and just trying to do their own thing and put the Witcher 3 name on it. Which, that's Hollywood in a nutshell, isn't it? Is that you always have these middle managers that are trying to add their 2 cents and changing things. And it is the best argument ever to not try to have games turned into TV. It's frankly extremely shocking that this is the direction so many game companies are going. A lot of them are Sony, and Sony already had its movie initiatives for video games, but CD Projekt Red 2, Kojima trying to turn Death Stranding into a video game. It's like everybody's trying to get into Hollywood when it has pretty much already been settled that video games as an industry are way more successful than Hollywood is at this point. If I was the person in charge of a video game, like the God of War reboot, I would be much happier to have it be a animated short series that goes direct to DVD, where I could just hire a bunch of animators in Korea or Japan or even Philippines, wherever animation is the cheapest, and just tell them exactly what I want them to do. Honestly, if you have a video game and it's going to be animated anyways, you might as well just take all the cutscenes from God of War and sell it as a direct to DVD collection of the cutscenes, cinematic experience. The idea of allowing the Hollywood people who have ruined Hollywood for almost its entire existence to get their claws into your artistic creativity and make all kinds of compromises and changes just so you have a live action show that is in no way ever going to be as good as the video game in the first place. It just seems like a pointless goal to try to have. And I imagine a lot of video game companies are being pretty hands off on it too, and just saying, do whatever you want with our license. We got the license check, so you're going to make a inferior version of our game, and it's not really going to spoil the branding of our game. I doubt any video gamer would not play a third God of War game whenever they do make a third God of War game if the God of War TV series is awful. And I doubt very many new people would play a third God of War game if the TV series is amazing. So, moving on. We already talked about Xbox saying High on Life is the biggest Xbox Game Pass launch of 2022. That is almost certainly, in part, a major critical statement on just the lack of games that came out in 2022. It is also the largest third-party launch in the service's history, which that probably is mostly a statement on just how Xbox Game Pass has grown and grown and grown, and gamers in general have just increased in numbers. Apparently, European Union regulators are reportedly asked game companies how Microsoft Activision's deal could play out. The EC has sent out a survey to developers and publishers asking what the deal could mean, it's claimed. What's funny is I thought they had already asked for that, or asked for public comment. So after, I guess, not really getting a lot of public comment, they now are sending out a survey. I saw that there was, a 91-page questionnaire written by the European Commission that almost certainly is digging for the responses they already want, whether they want to greenlight the deal or whether they want to try and stymie the deal. I'm not sure. I kind of thought the European Union had already greenlit the deal, but maybe there's still more to the process, or maybe I'm thinking of a different the government body. 91-page survey, though, questionnaire. I can't imagine a scenario where I was a manager at any level and I would want to fill out a 91-page questionnaire for anything. Like, maybe this is just an indication of what kind of manager I'd be, but almost certainly if I got a 91-page questionnaire for anything, I would throw it away and not respond to it ever. If it was under some kind of legal threat where I had to answer it, I would almost certainly hand it to an intern or somebody very low level to fill out the answers to. Like, that, there's just a lot of extra paperwork. Like, unless Microsoft pays me, like, that would be my thought too, is that, hey, if I'm being asked to fill out a 91-page questionnaire for the European Commission, I would definitely consider, hey, like, calling Microsoft and saying, would you compensate me for my time for filling out this 91-page questionnaire? I would really love to be paid, say, $100 an hour for what would be 3 hours of work. Not even asking for like a small amount of compensation. And yes, that probably would sound like a bribe, but you can basically get away with bribing if you account for it correctly. Yeah. But yeah, 91 pages is way too long. Because it's really just one question. Like, you don't need 91 pages to say, hey, is this going to affect you in any way? If yes, how so? 2 questions there. That's all you need. You don't need 91 pages. Let's see. A UK watchdog is calling on Nintendo to compensate users who bought new Joy-Cons due to drift. It also demands no quibble free replacement service for all drifting Joy-Cons bought since launch. Remember, this is all Video Games Chronicles articles, and that is a UK website. So that is the European UK focus. The consumer association is called Which ? This is, I suppose, technically news that you would want to report on, but it is also just something that's not going to be acted on. It's a go nowhere story. Nintendo's not going to do that unless they are legally forced to do it, and they won't be legally forced to do it anyways, because even in the UK, buyer beware is still pretty much the law of the land. Plus, it would be a nightmare, incredibly burdensome for Nintendo to have to seek out everybody who has replaced their Joy-Cons and then mail them a check for how much they spent purchasing new Joy-Cons. There would have to be some kind of list that you would have to get on to say, hey, I bought these new Joy-Cons because I had Joy-Con drift on the others, and too many people would certainly be on that list for Nintendo to really be able to compensate all of them easily. They could do it, certainly. But yeah, it's just kind of a great example how Nintendo's physical hardware definitely needs a rethink. We are past the point where we can have purple lunchboxes like the GameCube or breakable plastic things. We've got to get really ruggedized equipment as far as controllers are concerned. You can go pretty cheap on the actual consoles if you're not carrying the console like the Switch. Like, if the Xbox Series X, for instance, was half the quality in its plastic casing, as long as it's not overheating or breaking, as far as the internal components, the outside components work fairly well, being as cheap as possible. And the Switch is in this unique position where the Joy-Cons and controllers are just too small and too easy to break compared to other controllers. Moving on, PlayStation Store has launched a January sale with savings up to 75%. I can't help but think that most people are definitely broke at this point with Christmas coming out. It's so weird to see so many sales happening still. One of the things I'm going to try and do is see if I can get some smart home Christmas lights, fairy lights, on sale after Christmas, which is after the point where you'd really need them. But yeah, the cheap Chinese product Tuya, Tuya, is what I'm trying to get everything on the smart home for. And yeah, I saw a couple ideas that I could easily put a smart bulb outside and then have it on and working year round, and then have a schedule that when you get into December 1st, it changes the color from being just white light to cycling between red and green light, and then after Christmas it cycles back to just being white light, and then year round you can just have that bulb. Although in all fairness, I'm not certain that these Tuya smart bulbs will get the Wi-Fi signal far enough to be outside, nor am I certain that they are 100% waterproof. But yeah, particularly there are more Christmas lights that you can plug into outlets that are smart that I've found, but I'm in a unique position where my house has 0 outlets outside. It's terrible. Sniper Ranger says, "Oh, we'll see you around, Rydo." Yeah, see you around, Sniper Ranger. Tell me if you see any of my YouTube shorts and what you think, if they happen to naturally pop up on my channel. I'm actively trying to get feedback on those, even though they are pretty much 100% automated as to how they're created. But yeah, doing a little Christmas decorating after the fact is what I'm thinking about as far as integrating that into a smart home. More and more, I just want everything to be on the same app. The one thing I wish they did have is I saw this Bluetooth car battery monitor if your car battery has trouble and sometimes dies, but it is its own separate Bluetooth and connection and separate app. It would be nice if you had a Wi-Fi version of that would connect to your house when you park. But yeah, no such device. You probably don't really need it either, because when you get in a car, your Bluetooth will almost certainly be on, and then it will connect to your phone at that point. But my main goal would be to see considerably fewer apps on my smartphone in the next generation. Just more integration into single services, single apps, less random apps to do one thing. Of course, that doesn't have anything to do with video games, so let's get back to the news. The Epic Games Store next free game is, I think right now, the Lego Builders game, and that's the one I got, so I probably missed the other one. Slept through it, I guess. Apparently Goat Simulator 3 advertisement was pulled because it was using leaked GTA 6 gameplay. Rockstar owner Take-Two issues a DMCA takedown notice, and if anything, this is just a nice reminder that the DMCA does seem like it is being universally enforced, regardless of whether you like the DMCA or not, on most platforms, everywhere, on everyone. We're not seeing a situation where rich people are keeping their copyright infringement up on YouTube and other streaming services, whereas poor people are getting their stuff taken down. There is still a pretty large split, though, as far as who can actually afford to fight a copyright claim in court and get a video back up, and there is a huge split as far as YouTube's monetization service, in which big rich companies can claim small content creators' content with no real recourse. Moving on, UK regulators say public responses to Activision, the Xbox Activision deal, were mostly supportive of the merger, which, yeah, if they got the public responses being mostly supportive, then I wonder if this new 91 page questionnaire is fishing for negative responses. Apparently, around 75% of responses reviewed were broadly in favor of the proposed acquisition. I heard someone talking about one reason that they were against the merger in general is that you're getting into these just major situations in which labor is being weakened as far as its ability to leave a job and go somewhere else. If you were in a situation where you could have quit Activision Blizzard and gone and worked for Microsoft, if all of a sudden Microsoft owns Activision Blizzard, well, then you can't quit and go to another job. So you're, as an individual employee, less capable of seeking a different job somewhere else, either for better working conditions or to get away from somebody or to just get a raise or promotion. Moving on to the Gematsu articles, Legend of Heroes Trails of Reverie launches July 7th in the West. Picross X Picobits versus Ouzboros is now available worldwide. Floppy Knights now available for Switch alongside version 2.0. It adds 24 levels and over 50 new cards and new playable characters. So, Floppy Knights in particular was a PC game that... Let's see if it's on my wish list. Nope. It's just one I completely overlooked, or one I specifically said I didn't want to play. Yeah, and I don't even have enough energy to bother to investigate it further, so I'm just going to put it on the fall list at this point. A first-person narrative adventure game called Roman Sands Rebuild has been announced for Switch and PC, which I have to assume that there was something called Roman Sands originally, but I don't recognize it. And at the looks of it, it's not something I recognize either. You kind of have a pretty deceptive thumbnail here compared to what the screenshots seem to show in the actual gameplay. Apparently it's a visual novel with some puzzle elements. And I'll leave it at that. Paparazzi coming to the Switch in early 2023. So these are all the Nintendo Indie announcements. Mortal Shell Complete Edition now available for Switch. Senjo no Waltz for Switch launches April 13th in Japan. This is obviously a otome young maiden visual novel with the hunky anime boys. Let's see. Timirana Koku no Suiteru Hime to Suitenai Kishidan launches April 27th in Japan. This is another otome game. Pretty much whenever there's an announcement for one visual novel, there's usually an announcement for 2 or 3 in a row because they all seem to be published by the same group of publishers in batches. Again, another otome visual novel with the hunky anime boys. Idea Factory being the publisher. Disgaea 7 has a new trailer if you want to check that out on Gematsu. I will leave it at that since I'm checked out of the Disgaea series. Couldn't get into it. Sifu coming to Xbox Series, Xbox One, and Steam in March 2023 alongside an Arenas update. Yeah, I guess Sifu has just been a PlayStation exclusive up to this point. That again highlights how most video game journalists get the PlayStation version most of the time. So you will see mainstream video game journalists talking about a game and not even really mentioning the console that it's on, because it's just by default assumed that it's PlayStation, or it's by default assumed that it will be on every platform. More video game journalists probably should complain about games not being released day one on all the platforms. A game called Tinykin has a challenge update now available. This is not a game I recognize, though. Let's check it out on Steam. I'm still feel like I'm missing things, or catching up to things that I did miss before. Again, this looks interesting, so I'm going to put it on the fall list. Probably just wasting my time putting it on the fall list when I should just put it on the wish list. A puzzle platformer called the Gecko Gods adds a Switch version. I kind of want to see what this game is, if it's labeled as a puzzle platformer. Seems like you're playing as a gecko and that you can crawl anywhere. So I'm not sure where the actual puzzling comes into that. It may just be a case where you're doing a lot. Okay, there's some puzzling. Doing a lot of climbing, doing interesting amounts of attacks for a gecko. This feels like this should be brought to you by Geico Insurance if you're going to play as a gecko. It is an interesting twist on platforming, where almost always when you see platforming, you're playing as a human and you're jumping human heights, or triple jumping the height of a human. So when you scale it down to something different and you're just playing as a non-humanoid character in the first place, you are going in a different direction. I don't know if people can relate to playing as a gecko as much, but it's an interesting thought. I would hope, though, that this isn't like that game. I think it was called Snake Pass, where you were controlling a snake and the controls were just a little too rough, a little too complicated, a little too difficult to play as. I really wanted Snake Pass to be a much more enjoyable experience and an easy experience, and at the end of the day it just wasn't easy enough. And part of the problem with Snake Pass 2 that I don't think you'd run into here is that there was just a lot of empty sky space where you could fall down and die. So if this gecko falls from a high height and dies, that would be a mistake. If he falls and hits the ground and you have to start over, that's ideally what you would want to have happen. A side-scrolling adventure game called The Captain is now available for Switch. This looks like a point-and-click adventure game to me, but they're saying it's a side-scrolling adventure. Let's see. Yeah, I guess it is probably a bit more of a side-scrolling adventure game. This is on the fall list. If it's been on the fall list, though, I'm going to just put it on the wish list, like I should have done the two previous time. A game called Risk of Rain Returns has been announced for Switch and PC. This includes Risk of Rain Remastered and Enhanced, which that is, at a certain point, Gearbox Publishing just republishing a bundle of what should have already been available. And particularly for me, this puts me in this weird situation where I heard people talking about Risk of Rain many years ago, never got around to playing it, and now I'm being given a second opportunity to either play or ignore the game. Noticeably, though, that it's Gearbox Publishing, not Gearbox developing the game. Gearbox tried to be a publisher, but they have really no reason to be a publisher at this point now that they're owned by Embracer Group. Like, the first thing Embracer Group really should do is be the only publisher amongst all the companies they own. A game called Shinin Multimedia, no, that is the company. Shinin Multimedia announces a game called the Punchin for Switch, which looks like it's sliding. Well, I don't know. It seems like it's a collection of multiple mini games. There might be something to this, but this might very well just be a eShop exclusive game of no real interest. Let's see. Grim Guardians Demon Purge launches February 23rd for seemingly everything. Together they can break the curse. So you have, from the looks of it, anime girl with a gun, anime girl with a shuriken. That seems like there's definitely a theme here. Anime demon girl. Definitely feels like this is a direct parody of a Castlevania looking game. And then the actual gameplay looks like it might be a lot of side-scrolling shooting and platforming. Again, parodying what you would expect in a Castlevania game. Which that doesn't inherently mean it's bad by any means. It has a high chance of being bad because of the over focus on the anime girls, but it might be medium. There is always room for medium as far as what the gameplay is like. I don't know if I'd particularly agree on the idea of let's take a Castlevania game and make a very generic Castlevania game and then sell it on the anime thumbnail. Like, the actual pixely image of the characters isn't that appealing. So I would hope, if this game is going to succeed, that the gameplay is very solid and very polished. Because also you have to compare this to something like Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which, visually looking, this looks way better. This game looks way worse than Bloodstained Ritual of the Night does. So you don't want to fall in the middle between playing a old Castlevania game people would be nostalgic for and a very brand new Bloodstained game that looks way better visually. I don't think the Castlevania series is popular enough that you can have 2 or 3 Castlevania games come out in the same year without one of them suffering. Is this even coming to PC? You scrolled all the way down. There's a ton of screenshots. Usually, even for Gametsu, you don't get this many screenshots all at once. And a lot of these screenshots could have been taken from the videos. Yeah. PC, PlayStation, Switch, and Xbox. A romance visual novel, Kanon, is coming to Switch in the spring of 2023 in Japan. Another legacy key title ported by Prototype. So I imagine this is something that was originally released quite a while ago. Yeah. Kanon first launched on PC in 1999. So very old animation. This character here looks very similar to Cardcaptor Sakura and her friend. Was this animated by that team? Characters are fully voiced aside from the protagonist, who is only partially voiced. Several voice actors are mentioned. Yeah. This is definitely a 20 plus years ago anime style too. You just don't get generally characters that are kids or look like kids that aren't also trying to look like Moe, the more modern Moe art style. Yeah, in Cardcaptor Sakura's example, she was like an elementary school kid or a middle school kid, whereas the Moe art style, here's kind of a great comparison of you have an art style that's trying to be a little bit Moe, but you can kind of clearly tell that this character is supposed to be older, more matronly, motherly, just by the type of outfit she's wearing and by the chest size. The actual story here says Falcom is planning on at least 2 more refined title re-releases. The refined subtitle, I guess, is just a way of saying we're remastering games, possibly a second time. It may have already been called remastered before. Ys X Nordics details says Adol is 17 years old and it only has 2 playable characters and more. I'm not following this game much, so I don't know who Adol is. I still feel like the statute of limitations in Japan, unless it's been changed in the past couple of years, tends to still be 16 in most regions. So for them to say a character is 17 years old, that is a Japanese mentality of saying that Adol is an adult in a Japanese person's mind, at least to some level, whereas 18 is considered adult in the United States, although 21 to actually drink alcohol. And generally speaking, if I can throw out my own opinion, I'm not sure people ever become adults, but if they do, it's probably somewhere around 40-45 years old. At least somewhere in the mid-30s. Let's see. Compile Height teases an announcement for January 19th. A 2023 due issue of Weekly Famitsu. So the announcement is going to be in Weekly Famitsu on the issue released on January 29th. That was a complicated way to put that headline, but whatever. Neptunia series developer starting off the new year with something. So it's basically an announcement for an announcement. The Neptunia series is in this weird position where they've, I think, come out and said that they really don't feel like they can continue to make the Neptunia series the way they used to make Neptunia games. That there's just more pressure from the West and other places to censor themselves, that the Neptunia series is going to have to go in a different way. Although, in all fairness, the Neptunia series is nowhere as extreme as the Senran Kagura series, which I wouldn't be surprised if they do manage to continue the Neptunia series with minor censorship, and then the Senran Kagura series, in comparison, is just going to have to give up and not try to make any more, or ignore all pressure from censorship and just continue to make games as extreme as they want to, or even more extreme, just to counterbalance it. There is definitely an argument that like heavy metal and death metal and just like some of those musical genres that really push the boundaries of taste were super helpful as being the outliers and just pushing the boundaries and pushing the edges, or even drawing fire away from a lot of other bands that were still doing the same things they had always been done, but now were not getting news press from overreactionary people complaining about it. And it probably would be good in video games if we had more companies like that who were willing to take the heat or just push the boundaries to fight pressure to censor, instead of just rolling over and agreeing to censor, which is what they mostly are doing now. Moving on, the Famitsu review scores for issue 1778 are out. They have 3 games here. Let's see. Alpha Dia Neo, 27 out of 40, so that's awful. Hoko Life for Switch, 28 out of 40, that's awful. And then Marvel Midnight Suns, 33 out of 40, so average. A little interesting that Marvel Midnight Suns would even bother to be released in Japan this week. It's a little interesting that anything is being bothered to be released anywhere this week, as we're just at the end of the year. See, Triangle Strategy shipments and digital sales have topped 1 million, so they put out a celebration art piece here. This is kind of a great example of what an artist would be allowed to make if they're not really being paid for their time. It's just make a quick pencil sketch, or even take a concept art you've already done, color it in, finish it, put a 1 million on it. Don't try to make it look amazing. Although, in all fairness, the Triangle Strategy games may very well be in line with this animation anyways. Or at least similar enough. Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin DLC Different Future launches January 27th, according to Gamatsu. I want to check that article out. Grim Grimoire Once More launches April 4th in North America and April 7th in Europe. I don't feel like I've seen this character. I feel like I would have remembered this character. I definitely know this character is from Grim Grimoire. Although I still don't really know if I know what Grim Grimoire is. Yeah, it's this kind of flat 2D tower game more than anything. Kind of a management strategy game, I think. Which is just not really what you would expect. Is that you're doing this tower strategy game. When you look at those cutscenes and those characters. Yeah. A fairly large difference here to have like a cutscene that looks like this and then have the actual game look way different. And that is exactly what is the case. But obviously Grim Grimoire isn't the oldest of series, so it obviously had some level of success in that we're getting what I assume is a sequel. I assume it's a sequel and that this isn't just a re-release of Grim Grimoire 1. The classic PlayStation 2 strategy game Grim Grimoire is being remastered with brand new features to explore. Oh, this is actually a remaster from a PlayStation 2 game. I wonder if it ever came to the West. Because I definitely don't recognize it. And I guess we are once again starting to get weirder and weirder subtitles to indicate whether something is a remaster. And we're once again getting a lot of remasters in general. Although they are coming from like PlayStation 2 era, which I guess that this means people are no longer sticking to their PlayStation 1s, PlayStation 2s in Japan. They must be giving them up. And since you don't have backward compatibility on the PlayStation 4 or 5 to play PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2s directly, they're just porting them digitally instead. They must see the need to start making remasters instead. I actually pulled out my PlayStation 3 to try and play a Blu-ray and calibrate a 4K HDR TV, to then find out I really couldn't calibrate the 4K HDR TV on my PlayStation 3, and I'm a little surprised the PlayStation 3 even turned on for as little as I've used it in the past 10 years. But yeah, I desperately need to get a new Blu-ray player and just be done with the PlayStation 3. It's slow, and it doesn't support. I'm not even sure it supports 1080p 60 frames per second as far as Blu-rays. Not that I'm really watching Blu-rays. But I still own enough Blu-rays and DVDs to justify buying a Blu-ray player. They're still really expensive though. Like $200-300 for a good Blu-ray player. Really shouldn't be that expensive at this point. Moving on, One Piece Odyssey has a systems trailer, according to Komatsu, if you're interested in that. We need to burn through the news a little bit faster. The Yuri, that's Japanese for girl on girl, lesbian visual novel, Ever Maiden, Doraku no Sono no Otome Taichi is coming to the PS4 and Switch on April 27th in Japan. Which, it'll be interesting to see if there's any censorship for what is probably a Japanese-only PlayStation release. It does often seem like there's very possibly a different team that looks at PlayStation 4 games versus PlayStation 5 games. And a visual novel clearly doesn't really need to be on the PlayStation 5. We are still heavily hearing that the Switch and Nintendo is not in any way being as censorious as the PlayStation, Sony is. Although we have heard Nintendo try to clean up its eShop a little bit more as far as just having garbage games on the eShop. I'm not sure it really has so much to do with content as it does just poor quality products. And so yeah, you've got on this a lot of pencil sketched anime characters of different heights and different hair colors, all seemingly wearing the same uniform for whether that's for a school or whether an organization they're working for. We're starting to get more visual novel announcements, although I would say there still seems to be at least 30% of all visual novels that get announced don't seem to ever come to Steam or PC in general. Even in that announcement, it's not being released on PC because it's seemingly only at the moment focused on releasing in Japan, and PC gaming is still not popular enough to be included a lot of times. Let's see, moving on, Komatsu says Chocobo GP post-launch support to end with the Season 5 update. Mithril, which I assume is a premium currency, sales have been discontinued as of today. So this feels like this is yet another Square Enix game that is being shut down and abandoned so Square Enix can focus more on making more newer Final Fantasy games, really, and nothing else. But I also haven't heard of that game, so I wouldn't be surprised if not that many people were still playing it. Potion Crafting is coming to the PS5, PS4, and Switch in spring of 2023. This is an alchemist simulation game, of which there's a few that go in that direction, certainly, but maybe not too many. A puzzle adventure game called Sonority is available now for Switch. Interesting to be a Switch exclusive. From the looks of it, it looks like it is dealing with rocks, and it looks like there might be some letters, elements you have to collect, other elements. This may be one of these Switch games where the controls and the Joy-Cons play a major role in the actual gameplay mechanics too, so there's something about these letters that are playing a big role. So it almost feels like it's an educational game. Well, that looks different. If that comes to Steam, I might give it a chance. If it doesn't, whatever. The game 10 Hearts, which we haven't heard much about this in a while, launches April 20th of 2023. this is kind of a great example of games being announced and then just not having anything to say for several months until they actually come out. And honestly, I'm thinking of a different game that I would have potentially confused with the game 10 Hearts that looks much darker than this, but has the same general idea of robotic automatons characters. We have 2 more Gematsu articles. A game called Sail Forth is now available for basically everything. Looks like it is a pirate sailing adventure game with some kind of unique designs. If I'm recalling correctly, I think this was the game that was trying to be a lot like the Zelda Wind Waker game in visuals. In actual gameplay mechanics, I'm not sure it's quite there. It seems like obviously there's some puzzles and some fishing mini games in this, and probably a much bigger emphasis around just sailing and staying on the ocean, whereas Wind Waker's ocean was really just there to hide load screens, and you did a minimal amount of gameplay actually in Wind Waker. You occasionally would fight a creature while sailing, but mostly Wind Waker was a standard Zelda game in that you went to a castle dungeon and ran around on ground in the dungeon. I don't even know if Wind Waker had like 2 water levels or even 1 water level. It would have made sense that they could have said, hey, we have 2 water levels, so it'll be twice as bad. I don't even know what argument you can make there. Moving on, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection has its first major update now available. It includes a highly requested changes to improve online mode. Let's see. There seems to be a list of things here that are probably just to make the emulation of these old games a little bit better. But it is nice to see them even trying, because several times we've seen these collections of ROMs basically being emulated and resold, and there just not being any real effort put into it, and it just being a cheap attempt at getting money out of people. Alright, we've got a game here that came out on Steam. It's a VR game. I'll give it a follow. I'm not going to give it a YouTube short. I should have made some YouTube shorts over the weekend, and I didn't. So now we're going to burn through all the games that came out on Steam. With today being Wednesday, there's a decent chance that we'll see a minimal amount of adult games, but it is definitely not a non-zero chance. I'm going to say no to this horror game. It doesn't really show off anything in the screenshots, because yeah, the inconsistent release schedule, even though I do suspect there is some bundling that happens, really shows that adult games do tend to come out sometime between about Wednesday and Sunday. Tower defense game. Do I really want a tower defense game on my follow list? I put that on the follow list so fast. I'll give it a chance. It does visually look different enough to trick me, at least initially, to not immediately dismiss it. This Tiny doesn't look like anything. Dust World. This seems weird. Does this support English? English, Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. I'm gonna give this a follow, but again, YouTube short, I'd say no. It looks like it's probably just a Chinese garbage game, unlike some of these other garbage games. Music Swiper. How in the world would you play this with a controller? Like, isn't this obviously something that should be a mobile game only if you're going to just swipe back and forth? I am in a weird position, certainly, as far as rhythm games. I'm going to say no to this one, though. In that a rhythm game almost has to be something like Beat Saber that just becomes super popular for many, many months before I'd even think about making a YouTube short on it. And at that point, it would just be irrelevant to make a YouTube short on this. I guess this is just hand-drawn animation on what is an infinite runner, although noticeably, like, you can fairly well tell that this is in the background, but then this log here looks like she had to actually jump over, and then this spike here looks like it's something you have to slide under. And then I don't know what the whole face thing here is about, and I don't know what the eyeball thing is about, where she seems to have different color eyes. I guess it's free to play, but then 84 cents where you wear a sundress. I wonder if the sundress shows more revealing imagery, but even if it did, the animation here is awful, so yeah. The general concept of an infinite runner where zombies are chasing you isn't terrible, or just having to escape from attackers in general isn't a terrible thought, but the gameplay mechanic of being an infinite runner is a pretty bad gameplay mechanic. It's just repetitive. VR horse racing, sweetie, with horse being spelled a very weird way. It's spelled correctly over here, H-O-R-S-E versus H-O-U-R-S-E. Yep, this looks like a garbage asset flip VR game, so no to that. Seeing more and more VR games, and I can't help but wonder if this is because of the PlayStation VR 2 being announced, that more and more people are just trying to make an assumption that VR is going to come back into popularity or become popular. This looks interesting. Interesting enough. It kind of looks like the Lego Builders game if you just got rid of the Lego part of that, which maybe that is the right way to go with that series, because I don't know if Lego's adding things. So here we have one adult game that came out today, Divine Adventure RPG. It has what I have to assume is stolen art throughout the entire game. And otherwise it looks like it's mostly just a visual novel garbage game. But yeah, you look at this character here, this is a Dragon Ball Z character. Either a fan art of that character or just straight stolen art. There's another screenshot here where you have Dragon Ball Z looking character fan art. Yep. And oddly, for an adult game, the only screenshot here that's particularly obscene has just a butt showing, and then I guess there's one screenshot where there's a disembodied penis and a lot of skin showing, big cleavages. It's $14.99, which is incredibly expensive. If we look here, we can definitely see a heavy focus on, I guess, fan arts of most of the female characters from Dragon Ball Z, and potentially turning some of the Dragon Ball Z characters into female variants. This is probably a great example of a game that should be released not on Steam, A, because it's probably copyright infringement, and B, because it is something that only lives or dies based on people being a fan of Dragon Ball Z and something else. It's not something that feels like a commercial product or something that should be on Steam, either via Steam Direct or otherwise. Here we have a game called Ballads and Romances, which this again is probably a no, but I'll be generous and give it a follow. And in this case, it's free, so an English-Polish language game. Let's see, Space Fighters, just a generic shoot 'em up. Super Hoppers, seems like it's kind of a puzzle timing game where you're trying to hit basketball into the basketball hoop with some random things blocking your shots. Yeah, I don't think there's quite enough of a game there that I'd put that on the fall list. This looks like nothing. Is this an adult game? Psyhanol. I don't know what the pun is supposed to be around that. Psychic Hanol. This is straight up a not school shooting simulator, but a job shooting simulator. Take revenge on your bosses and colleagues for the fact that you were fired. Shoot and break everything around you. Do not leave anything behind you. Destroy the office and no one will help you in this as good luck. So good luck and don't freak out. Yeah. So yeah. Probably not the kind of game that needs to exist, in the fact that there are so many mainstream news sources that would love to have a game like this to point to and show that this is the deranged minds of gamers, is that you would want to simulate something like that. And then it would just boil back down to standard gun debates in the United States and go nowhere anyways. We really haven't had a lot of office shootings. I'm a little surprised by it in the United States lately. Or we really, even this year, I would say, haven't had a ton of school shootings. Although the numbers do just seem like they go up and up and up on school shootings. And each one is a tragedy in itself. I would have a hard time thinking, yeah, I guess there are some people out there that would have gotten fired from a job and hated their coworkers and their boss, but I would say most people that get fired and are irate employees tend to focus down on one person, not just every person. Like, I've had bad bosses and I've had bad colleagues, and I've had jobs where there are bad bosses and bad colleagues together, but that it never really crossed the line to saying every colleague and every boss in an entire building were worthy of being gunned down or anything like that. I'm going to give this a follow, but it's probably nothing, so I'm not going to bother to make a YouTube short on it. I'm being more critical on the YouTube shorts than I probably should be. This Christmas game will probably be nothing. At a certain point, if everybody around you sucks, that may be true. But if you think everybody in the world sucks, well then obviously you've been outvoted at that point. So I guess at that point you have to think you're the one that sucks. And that's one of the nice things about YouTube and the comments on YouTube too, is that it brings me in contact with random people all over the internet, and shockingly I'm always surprised as to how nice almost all of them are as far as YouTube comments and stuff, which always confuses me when people say that they're just nothing but toxic gamers in the gaming community, is I just don't have that experience. Yeah, I don't think this game Don't Steal My Christmas is anything. And yeah, that is also true in general. If I go to a random restaurant or a random storefront, random strangers that I barely know treat me very nicely and seem like very pleasant people, or at least decent people enough. Yeah. It's only when you really start to get to know people, your friends, your family, usually your family that you're stuck with, that you start to get the full details of their neuroses and their annoying behaviors. This game, Jelly in the Dark. I almost want to say yes to this, but I don't think so. I just don't think there's quite enough polish here. It's a weird concept, being a like jelly bear and then trying to sneak out of an ant hive, which is what I think the idea. Can you survive the sweet smell again with a sweet smell against ants? Caution, there's no one way out. There's not one way out. So, yeah, I'm gonna say no to that. Should just be crueler, and I need to move faster too. No reason to go long today. Yeah, it looks like that's gonna be the only adult game that was released today, too. This is just a prologue, so I'm gonna say no to that. Like, one adult game that is just a bunch of fan images of Dragon Ball Z girls. It is, I guess, a little surprising that there isn't just like an official Dragon Ball Z, more adult story with all the female characters. Although, obviously, the true love story is between Goku and Vegeta in Dragon Ball Z, and their love language is obviously fighting stronger and stronger enemies. And yeah, Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z are animes that are kind of just perpetually stuck in being for little kids, even though very old adults may still be watching them even to this day. Like, it would be a little weird if there was a mature only X-rated Dragon Ball official anime series that came out. Marble Racing 2022 barely coming out in time. You might as well have just called it 2023 at this point. But I'll give that a chance. And a YouTube short, just because Marble Racing is kind of popular on YouTube. Although, if I'm not putting the name of the game in the title, I'm sure the algorithm won't ever catch on to that. I'll give that a chance too. This one seems to be a little too zoomed out for the black and white visual aesthetic that it's going for. I think you have to kind of get in more detail and higher resolution and more zoomed in if you're going to limit yourself so severely to only 3 shades of gray or 3 shades of white and black. Cosmo Clash doesn't really look like anything. Is that game still forth? Did we already put that on the fall list? Guess not, so I'll put it on the fall list again. Squared. Just looks like a square platforming, frustration platformer. Should I make YouTube shorts around these games? Probably it would be a thought, but I think I'll say no to this one. Obviously, there is a fandom of frustration platformers for as many that get made. I'm gonna give this a chance, but it probably doesn't deserve it. Magic Corgi. Yeah, I'll make a YouTube short around this, but I'm not gonna bother to put it on the follow list because I would already say no. I need to be more loose as far as the YouTube shorts that get made, particularly if I was ever going to try and go for like a third YouTube short time slot. Just put out more and more. It was one of the things that the Tube Buddy live stream talked about, though, is to get quality up on YouTube shorts before you just start putting out a bunch of them. And they were definitely talking on a 1 a day, 2 or 3 a week scale, whereas I've heard arguments that you should be doing 3 minimum a day. I wouldn't be surprised if 3 minimum a day right now, as YouTube shorts are hot, is right, and then it eventually gets down to a point where you're better off scaling down. I could see going back down to like just 1 a day, particularly once the YouTube people pushing YouTube shorts stop pushing it as much. Cabbage bangers. Yeah, this almost looks interesting, but not enough. Multiplayer combat game. Online PvP only. I seriously doubt that many people are gonna play a game like this. Yeah. I could definitely see myself being much more picky as far as what YouTube shorts get made, and then potentially getting more views for fewer shorts, and just consistently getting 200 or 300 views, which probably is not anywhere enough views on shorts. There is definitely that other side of the equation where getting 10,000 views on a YouTube video may be the equivalent of getting 100,000 views on a YouTube short, and so getting bigger numbers may not really mean much. Let's see. So now we're at the GameDeveloper.com articles. Riot Games' Valorant director has left the studio for Bungie, from hero shooters to something currently unannounced. Okay. This is the ex-Riot Games developer Joe Ziegler. He's now part of Bungie, Destiny 2 developers, which, if anything, that's probably good news because it hints that Bungie is actually doing something other than Destiny 2 in the future, instead of me just having to make the assumption that they were only going to work on Destiny 2 and nothing else. High on Life is the most popular title on Xbox Game Pass, where I talked about that. Let's see. Ubisoft reveals a transition process for Stadia owners. Ubisoft's process for bringing Stadia owners over to PC is relatively simple. It just needs to be done before January 18th. Which, yeah, I guess get on that if you haven't transitioned your Stadia games, if you were into Stadia. I almost read this as Ubisoft was revealing a transition process for like Yves Guillemot, the CEO of Ubisoft. I probably mispronounced his name, which I wouldn't be surprised if I did see that headline in the next year or two. I think he's pretty old, and I think he's relatively tired of fighting with Ubisoft internal politics and internal employees. Yep. Let's see. Sony's DualSense Edge won't fully address battery life or joystick drift. Not a full evolution of the PlayStation 5's original DualSense controller, it sounds like. And see, this is an interesting visual because I don't know what this really means. Do you get some kind of plastic thing that you can stick on top of these controllers to pop the caps off and pop them on? Or is this just some kind of visual indicator that you can pop the dual sticks off and on? Let's see. Moving on, Art Dink's Triangle Strategy has sold 100 million copies. Here we can see another image. And yeah, even though these two images are in the same art style, you can definitely tell that there's a different color palette here, and it's less effort and less detailed than this image. So yeah, this is probably get this done in a couple hours, where this is probably get this done in a couple days as far as the level of detail on pictures. And I'm not sure I'd particularly be able to describe this as, I would call this 2D. Obviously it's not 3D, with a colored pencil sketchbook art style in a somewhat colorful palette. But arguably I would agonize over that and say it's probably not a colorful palette, because it isn't those bright vivid colors you'd expect in your average anime. It is much more natural, muted colors that would be more in that color, that natural category that I'm thinking of. Moving on, Call of Duty players have filed a lawsuit to stop Microsoft Activision merger. I can't help but assume that these players are being supported by some lawyer or Sony or somebody, some middleman for Sony. 10 players in California, New Jersey, New Mexico are taking action against Microsoft to stop it from having far outsized market power and killing competition in the game industry. So immediately I would see you have conflicting jurisdictions for what you're hoping would be a class action suit. Even in this case, I'm not sure class action suits are the right term to potentially stop a merger from happening. But these conflicting jurisdictions probably should push the legislation into federal courts in Washington state, because that's where Microsoft is situated, for interstate commerce law reasons. And yeah, but I definitely have heard stories where it sounds like different people have had different lawsuits in different states all going at the same time, hoping one of them really succeeds. But you do have to say the numbers here are pathetically low. 10 players actually filing a lawsuit is a slow start. If you can get a class action suit where you could get lots and lots of people, and thousands or millions of people all involved in the suit, then you might have something at that point. But the US government pretty much makes it fairly obvious that individuals don't really have any support in the court system. So even if there was 10 million people suing to stop the Activision Blizzard merger, I don't know if they have any way in which they could actually stop it. It would be an interesting thing to ask somebody like Legal Eagle to cover, and I'm sure he very well might get into it and cover it, because he would definitely be much more of an expert than a non-expert like me. We're consistently having some pages not load. And then a CMA inquiry shows significant public support for the Microsoft Activision's acquisition, which that inherently highlights. Another issue, if 10 people are suing to stop the acquisition and the CMA union, I think that's CMA. No, CMA is not a union. I think they're a survey group. Competitions and Markets Authority. This is the UK people. We already talked about this article, but yeah. just to run the numbers, you have 10 people suing to stop the acquisition, and then you have a survey from the UK where 2,100 responses were given, 3/4 or so were positive, so you're talking 1,500 people are for the acquisition versus 10 people against it. So, yeah. Take those numbers for what they're worth. Apparently, Kickstarter has shared a policy for campaigns featuring, quote, tricky AI artwork. For now, Kickstarter is looking at AI-related work on the platform on a case-by-case basis. Tricky basically means that there's no legal precedence on whether it's copyright infringement or not. I think at some point laws will almost certainly be passed to say it is copyright infringement, but it'll be hard to prove in court to say my copyrighted art was put into a data set of 10 million photos, and then the AI artist made a photo based on my copyrighted art. It is ridiculous that anybody was even working on AI art. Like, those are the scientists that end up doing the biggest harm. They did it because they could. They didn't ask themselves if they should, because making AI that can make art, that can write essays and write stories and create recipes and doesn't even have to be particularly great at it, just good enough to put people out of jobs. That's probably the mistake. And yeah, that is, I guess, the mistake of capitalism in the first place, is that if we're building better tractors, and then the tractors is putting hundreds of farmers out of business, should we have built better tractors in the first place, or should we have just lived with what we had? Particularly now that we have tractors that are millions of dollars in expense, and a lot of the money and profit that a farmer would have been making working the soil with his own hands is going into the pockets of a CEO who owns a tractor company. Alright, well, moving on, we have some follow list cleanup here. This article says it's a online game or a single player game where you're sled dogging and running a base camp. Okay, that looks good enough. It's not in early access anymore, so I'll put that on the wish list. Archvale RPG bullet hell game, rated very positively, not in early access. Just throw it on the wish list then. Archons of Doom came out December 1st of 2021. It's been a year. It's got one review, so it's just irrelevant, so it leaves the fall list. Archie came out November, and it's irrelevant, so it can leave the fall list with 3 reviews. Archery Simulator I will give more time to, although it doesn't look amazingly good. Archaeologist Simulator is rated negatively, so it can leave the fall list. Archon came out in September of 2021. Looks like it's a card game. It's 80% positive, but it's just not relevant, so it needs to leave the fall list also. I don't even know if I really need to have any more card games on my wish list at this point. I'm pretty burned out on card games. This is very positive, so I'll put it on the wish list. In fact, this is one of the games that one of those listicles said had some of the best stories ever. Let's see. Arcade Redemption. I'm still trying to find a good version of this. I managed to actually look at an arcade and just like what arcades are nowadays for kids barely even look like this as far as all these carnival games. Like you see fewer and fewer even carnival games, more and more just cut the rope, Facebook, iPad type games. You're definitely not seeing any actual arcade games or pinball games. It's a shame that this is mixed because I would like to have it. Would like to see a version of this type of game that exists. But they probably aren't even that fun playing them in virtual ways. Let's see. This is December 1st, 2021, so I'm going to say no to that. And then this is June 2021, but it is rated positively 86% positive and has actually 31 reviews, so it just barely is over the limit of being relevant enough to put it on the wish list. Although I would be kind of hard pressed to buy this game because it does look pretty rough. Alright, well, that is the fall list cleanup. So, let's see. We need to do a Duel Live, and then I'll scroll down my Twitter feed while the Duel Live is playing, and then that'll be it for this stream. See if there's any new news. Probably not much new news. Oh, I guess the Twitter drama still is continuing because I've now heard that Elon Musk apparently has said specifically now that he's going to step down after doing the poll and then saying, well, the poll doesn't count because there was a bunch of bots. But yeah, I think the other investors that helped him buy Twitter have asked him to step down and very possibly name a new CEO who he very possibly may still have total control of. So if I want to double down on something I've said about Twitter amongst this whole debacle, is that perhaps Elon Musk would have been the cleansing fire for Twitter in firing a bunch of overpaid employees who haven't really done a great job of making Twitter a better place. They failed to innovate with new features. They failed to maintain an improving service. So perhaps there could be a healing rain as there is some new CEO that comes in and says, let's re-interview some of these employees and see if they're actually good, and hire new people. We might, if we saw Twitter all of a sudden bounce back from what has been a very jarring experience, that would be interesting. I don't know if there's any faith left in Twitter though at this point, particularly if Elon Musk is going to have any ownership in the company at all, or the Saudi government or the Saudi prince is going to have any ownership in Twitter. Open broadcast software has a scam alert saying that there are ads on Google that link to a fake version of OBS with malware. Only download OBS from their official site, that's obsproject.com, and never click on any ads claiming to be OBS. It is obsproject.com, not obs-studio.com, is an example they're showing here. And yeah, Google really shouldn't have ads or links to software sites in any way. Like when you type in a obvious name of a software like OBS, the first search result should be to the official download website. And if anything, there should probably be a warning bar below that saying all these other links lead to some other place. YouTube gaming. I guess we should. Is highlighting YouTube gaming content creators. And this is just going to be a collection of people I have never heard of. Nintendo Talk with 141,000 subscribers and 30-minute viewers. Clearly these are the lucky few. Kang Gaming, 137 subscribers, 12 million views. Miss Bubbles, 10,000 subscribers, 690,000 views, so considerably fewer. Weird duck face picture to use. And then Eon Wana at 47,000 subscribers and 3 million views. Pretty small content creator. And then Cozy K with 50,000, I think that's 59,000.4, not 590,000 subscribers, and 2 million views. Fairly low amount of views for a lot of these characters. And yeah, there are winners and there are losers, and those numbers are not big. I've never seen or heard of any of these people before. Looking at some of the games these people are playing are not really in line with what you would expect to think of when you're thinking of a gamer who's playing games. Disney, Dreamlight Valley, Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley. And it has to be pointed that there is no white male amongst this group at all. Like, it's people of color or it's females. The most offensive thing here, though, is the games they're actually playing. That it is all in this category of Animal Crossing, Disney, Stardew Valley. Alright, wait, I was wrong. There is one white male with bright red hair. I totally forgot him. He just blended in the background. Ironically, he may also be the one with the most subscribers in the entire, and the most number of views. This also highlights how the number of views in particular, this is just taking forever. This Duel Live. Yeah, having 30 million views basically is nothing and barely has any connection to the number of subscribers you have on YouTube. Yep. And there really needs to be a better system where you get rewarded. One view should count for something. In some way. Instead of having to have these overinflated numbers. Well, that was basically the only new thing on Twitter. Alright, let's speed this up because this is just taking forever. You still get a very weird experience doing these Duel Live things because you're just getting like random games that people randomly play. There's probably some selection going on, but not any real curation. Lolly Dragon says, watch my replay. I have no idea how I would be able to do that. I guess you'd probably have to like friend me, and I'm ending the stream right now, so sorry. But I guess if you could friend me, maybe then I could click on a person and see a replay, but that's not something I really would do. Doesn't really seem like you can see somebody's replay. Just I only do the dual lives because it kills time at the end, and because of this daily quest. If this daily quest didn't exist, I would never do the dual lives. It's ridiculous that they even focus on dual lives, considering there are so many other features that should be in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel that aren't. Anyways, well, that's going to be it for the stream. Thank you to Sniper Ranger and Lolly Dragon for chatting in the chat. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos because YouTube wants all of that nonsense. Click the notification bell, all of that. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's several listed down below in the description as far as links. I probably should be on some more social media sites, but I just don't want to waste energy on it. And then if you want to support me even further than doing all of that, there's a link to Patreon in the description, or you could friend me on Steam and gift me a gift card or a game off my wish list. I'm not sure how the free Steam decks are going to be given away during the Steam Christmas sale, but if it's done by purchases, that might be an ultimately interesting way to support people like me, friending them on Steam and gifting them games, so it makes a purchase that might potentially win a Steam Deck for you. Plenty of people have too many games on Steam already and don't have a reason to buy any more for themselves. That's going to be it for the stream though. As always, thank you for watching and have a good evening.